Good morning, everyone, and a good night, Shabbos Kodesh, Parshas Tetzavah, and a beautiful message of Bitachon from the Parsha. In this week's Parsha, the Torah introduces the statement or the concept of Kol Chachmei Leiv, of all of those with a wise heart came together to build the Mishkan and to make the begadim, make the clothing of the Kohanim. And the Ramban asks later in the Chumash, what exactly does it mean to be a Chacham Leiv, to be a wise-hearted individual? And it's based upon his query that he has on the building of the Mishkan in general and the making of the begadim, of the clothing of the Kohen and the Kohen Gadol. And he asked the following question: how is it possible that Klal Yisrael, who has just come out of Mitzrayim, that all they knew how to do was make pyramids and buildings by putting together straw and mud and making bricks? They were beaten to a pulp, they worked day and night, they only built obtuse buildings, they had there was nothing refined about their building abilities or what they were able to do over there. Ask the Ramban, how is it possible that the nation of Klal Yisrael, that were avadim, they were slaves unto Paro, and all they knew for 210 years was this back-breaking labor, difficult and harsh, and all they could put together with their hands, you could imagine the amount of calluses that were on those hands, all they could put together was the bricks made out of the mortar and the straw. How could they suddenly shift gears, come into the midbar, be given a command of Asuli Migdash, make for me the Migdash, and that requires all the details that HaKadosh Baruch Hu lays out for us in the Torah. And it requires being able to work with argaman, with the wool, and weaving and the like, and knowing how to cut the wood exactly in the right way, and how to lay it with gold, how to sculpt and form the gold. You have to make kruvim, how to make all of the kelim, the delicate kelim, the vessels that are there in the Beis HaMikdash, so that the Kohanim can use them each one in the right way. How were they able to build such a precise building of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle, when they had no experience beforehand? Remember, they were not Israeli, so they were not general contractors. They weren't in construction business. They didn't have their degrees that they went through all the classes to know how to make everything. They were slaves. How did they suddenly come into the middle of the desert, be given a command to make the most magnificent structure along with the most beautiful clothing anyone has ever seen before, and do it exactly the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted, without any classes, without any training, without any background at all or experience in these areas? Says the Ramban, that's what it means, Kol Chachmei Leiv, the wise-hearted individuals of Klal Yisrael. They came with a desire to know what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted. Chachma, wisdom, is not only what you know, it's what you want to know. And if you have a strong seated desire inside of your heart that you want to know, to be able to do the Ratz and the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem is going to send your way the ability to do His will. And therefore the Yidden banded together when they heard the command of the Mishkan, when they saw the command that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them to make these exquisite clothing of the Kohanim. They said, we don't know how to do it, Ribbono Shel Olam. Our hands are filled with calluses and we're achy from the 210 years of slavery. The only thing we're familiar with is bricks, which is mud and dirt and straw. Teach us. We're coming with a Chacham Leiv, with a wise heart, a heart that wants, that's open to be able to do your will. You help us. Move our hands along, make our minds open up, our hearts be able to see what it is that you want from us. Says the Ramban, that's the way they were zeicha. That's how they were able to build the Mishkan and the Midbar. That's how they were able to make all these clothing. Not because they knew how to, but because they wanted to know how. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them the abilities. He infused them with inner wisdom to be able to make the most magnificent structure in the history of the world, surrounded by the begadim, the clothing, the beautiful clothing of the Kohanim. This is an enormous lesson in Bitachon. When a person trusts in the Ribbono Shel Olam, they knew that HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded them to do something, and it had to be done, and they trusted in Hashem. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu informs me and commands me that this is the mitzvah that I have to do, He commands me that this is what I have to make, even if inside of my mind I am doubtful that I could do it. If I'll be Beiteach b'Hashem, I will trust in the Ribbono Shel Olam. I'll rely upon Hashem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give me the wherewithal and the abilities to fulfill that mitzvah, those commands and the directives that He is sending in my way in front of me. And so too, Klal Yisrael, with their enormous amounts of bitachon, they were able to build the mishkan and the begadim and the clothing for the Kohanim. And in our own lives, the same thing should be true. There are numerous mitzvahs that we are commanded in, and sometimes they seem daunting and overwhelming. There are commitments to Yiddishkeit, commitments to davening, commitments to learning that a person has obligations to make. And yes, they seem very lofty and large in front of us, sometimes like the Yam Suf that is not ready to split. However, if I'm Beiteach b'Hashem, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu would never give me a mitzvah that I can't handle. HaKadosh Baruch Hu would never command me to do something that I wouldn't be able to fulfill. HaKadosh Baruch Hu would never send a mitzvah my way that was impossible for me to be Mekayim to keep. And I trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu that He'll give me the abilities, He'll give me the sense of mind and the understanding and the wherewithal to fulfill that mitzvah that He's sending in front of me. So then that bitachon that will carry me through so many ventures in my life, through so many opportunities that come my way that the average person would say, it's too much, I can't handle it. The Beiteach b'Hashem says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if you are assigning me the mitzvah, if you're asking me to do this chesed, you want me to be mizgaber, to overcome my taivas, my desires, you want me to overcome my midos, rois, my bad character traits. It's hard, I know that it's hard, because I'm trying to go through it. But on Beiteach, I trust, I rely upon you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If you want it from me, and you're commanding it to me, and you're asking me, then I know that I have the koyach on the inside with your siyata d'shemaya, with your heavenly assistance to fulfill your ratzain, your will, and your command. So let us take a lesson from the parsha of a chachmei leiv, and we should investigate our hearts to make sure that there's enough chachma, enough wisdom, enough wanting and yearning in there to do the ratzon Hashem. And the more that there is, the greater the levels of bitachon, the more we will be zoiche to take the mitzvahs at hand, the directives that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends us, the opportunities that Hashem puts in front of us, and instead of despairing and saying it's too much, we realize in our great levels of bitachon that Hashem sent it to us. That means that we'll have the siyata d'shemaya to fulfill His ratzon, His will. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful Shabbos.